Welcome back to Off-Road Outlaws, y'all, and in this video, we're going to be diving into some new information about American Marksman that we haven't checked out yet because, honestly, American Marksman news has been a little bit spotty lately. However, they recently dropped some really interesting details that we're going to go into, hopefully, ahead of when they announce when the release window is going to be, because we already know a little bit about the release window, but nothing concrete just yet. But without any further ado, we're going to have some Off-Road Outlaws gameplay in the background and dive into this new American Marksman info. Now, as the developers have already stated a couple of times, the general idea of the release window we're looking at is sometime in February. We just don't have an exact date from the developers just yet. Now, this is one of the most detailed screenshots of the game we've seen so far. It pretty much shows the completed UI, and it also shows kind of what can happen in terms of weather. If you have a camp set up, you have a vehicle right there. This is actually one of the first screenshots that we've seen where we see a vehicle kind of outside of the first-person view inside the vehicle. This is like your vehicle parked at camp. You've got your tent set up. You've got your little tower set up. You've got your map up on the top left. You've got all of your equipment down there in the middle. And then, of course, all of the different, positions that you can take over there on the right. And as you can see, right above the home icon, it has the little, icon to indicate that you're in camp. So in this particular part of the map, I would say that this is going to be the area that you'll always return to without leaving your session. Now, we don't quite know yet how large the maps actually are. That kind of remains to be seen, although I would imagine that they're probably about the same size as a large Off-Road Outlaws map. If they're any bigger than that, we're going to be looking at some pretty sizely maps. Now, it looks like you can see pretty far out into the distance, but I don't really know how much of that terrain is actually able to be interacted with. Now, the reason I say that is because there's always going to be a point at which the terrain will sort of cut or basically end, and I don't know if they're going to position the ending of the terrain with a, like a steep wall that you can't climb over or drive over, like it's just too steep for it, or if it's just going to be an invisible wall, or if it's literally going to be just a spot where the terrain cuts off and you fall into oblivion. We'll have to wait and see once the game actually drops and we can get our hands on it, because once we can get our hands on this game, we'll be able to find out a lot more really, really quickly, and of course, we're going to dive into all of the little ins and outs of the game just to see how far we can push it right when it launches. Now, one thing to keep in mind as we take a look at this next shot is that during the day in-game, when the sky is clear, there's no weather, there's no fog hanging over the area, you're dealing with a much, much, much longer draw distance, and look how many different levels there are. And when I say levels, I mean sort of levels to the terrain. If you look really far out into the distance, there's rendered detail pretty far out. Now, I'm sure that will be able to be adjusted in the game's graphics settings, because Off-Road Outlaws lets you do that, and I believe No Limit Drag Racing 2.0 lets you do that as well. So it makes sense that American Marksman would let you do it, but it's gotta be on the higher graphic settings in this screenshot. It's gotta be. At least I would assume, because if you can go any higher up in the graphics than this, you're talking about something that wouldn't even look like a mobile game anymore. Now, this is a multiplayer screenshot, because as you can see, there is a room code, just like in Off-Road Outlaws and No Limit Drag Racing, and there's also a daily task. Now, I don't know if those daily tasks will be active in just multiplayer, or multiplayer and single player, or if there will be different challenges between multiplayer and single player, but either way, it's really cool that they're kind of adding in a little bit of extra objectives to do, like a little bit of extra objective material to do in-game, because let's say you're in a multiplayer session with your friends, and maybe you do a couple of things here and there, but you're maybe not quite sure what to do next, and it's like, oh, well, we'll just go and do the daily task, and then once we're done with that, we'll come back and figure out what we actually want to do next in-game. Now, is it weird, though, that, as I look at this screenshot, I start to wonder if, and I'm not quite sure if y'all can see this or not, but if you look way back towards where the first tree line sort of starts, there's a little bit of a cut in between like where the grass is on that tree line, and then the next tree line itself. And I wonder if that's just the end of the render distance, or if that's actually the end of the usable map area, like the usable play area on this particular map. So that's something we'll have to kind of dig a little bit more into as we get a little bit more info about the game and we start to see more about the game. And not only that, but when we of course get our hands on the game finally. Now, I also would imagine that since this game allows you to use scopes, binoculars, all different types of optics basically, you should be able to explore a pretty long way, because if you can see all the way to the end of a map, you know, just by looking through one of your optics, you're probably not really going to have all that much game area to actually use. So, considering the fact that optics are going to be a major part of this game, they will have had to have put a lot of effort into making the maps large. And the more I think about it, the more I wonder if these maps are actually going to be even larger than anything we've seen in Off-Road Outlaws before, because Off-Road Outlaws maps can be large, but I think they always kind of reach a point where they just stop, basically. Like, there's not much more that they can do. There's not much more room that they can actually, like, fit a map into. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder if, since American Marksman isn't going to have as many, like, it's not going to be as heavy on vehicles, it makes me wonder if they can maybe dedicate some of those resources to making the maps a little bit bigger and making the usable area a little bit more vast. I don't know if that would be the case. I really don't know if that's actually even possible within this game engine. But it's an interesting thought for sure. Now, one interesting thing about this next shot is that as we look at this next particular shot, this is probably a little bit closer to what you're going to have in the beginning of the game. Maybe not necessarily like right off of the bat, but like a little bit earlier on, because you're dealing with, like, you know, a smaller house, not necessarily a crazy vehicle, maybe one trophy right there in front of the house, but not a lot going on. I mean, like, right when we started seeing information about this game, it was instantly like we were seeing the really large houses and a bunch of different trophies out in front of the house. You know, we were seeing crazy, well, not crazy vehicles, but vehicles that maybe would have been accessed a little bit later on in the game. But I think this does a really good job of representing what you're going to be able to achieve after not too much time spent in the game. And honestly, I like that. I like the fact that they're actually showing what the progression could look like. And of course, down in the bottom, you see farm, equipment, shops, vehicles, trophies, and of course the ability to buy gold. But right there up in the middle, you can see where it says that that particular account is a non-member account. So if you're wondering if there will be crossover between, say, for example, Off-Road Outlaws, No Limit Drag Racing 2.0, and here where they do the same type of membership, yes, that will of course be a thing. We knew that for a while, but I generally get questions about that whenever I've done some American Marksman videos, where people are asking, will there be a membership? And I was kind of pretty sure that there would be, because usually with a game like this, there is. And of course, you know, some people are interested in the membership, some people are not. Although I don't quite fully know what the membership benefits are yet for American Marksman. They'll probably have something to do with gold, something to do with vehicles, and also something to do with equipment, because equipment is a little bit more prioritized in this game than the vehicles are, whereas in the other games from this developer, the vehicles have been a little bit more the priority, whereas I feel like the vehicles in this game are a little bit more on the secondary end of things. And since we had a look at what it might look like on your main screen towards the beginning of the game, this is what it might look like with a little bit more time and a lot more trophies on your main screen. This, I think, happened when a developer may have gotten a little bit out of hand and put like 1 million trophies everywhere. And I don't think that most main screens are going to look like this, but if they ever did, you would know that someone had a tremendous, absolutely enormous amount of hours into the game. Now, I would have probably chosen a different main house for this particular screen, for example, but I mean, that's up to whoever's playing the game. And I love how that same Chevy square body, the one that's in the, like, kind of the left-hand corner of the screen, not really the left-hand corner, but in the left-hand side, that one has pretty much been shown in various colors in all of the newer screens screenshots of the game. And I don't know if that's because the Chevy Square Body is a truck that a lot of people know, a lot of people easily identify with, a lot of people easily recognize that truck, or if it's just a truck that the developer that was taking these screenshots prefers. But we still don't know how many trucks are in the game. But that same Chevy Square Body has been, like, it's been super present in every single screenshot update. Well, maybe not every single one, but more often than not, we keep seeing that same Chevy Square Body in various colors, various configurations, all of that different stuff. So I'm really curious if that one's going to be like one of the first trucks you get. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if that's one of the first trucks you get. I really wouldn't be. But if y'all enjoyed this American Marksman update, let me know any thoughts and opinions or questions you might have in the comments down below. Hit that like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all next time.